This is my presentation on culture through food and my experience at Kim Ann Restaurant. I first learned about Kim Ann when my friend told me that there was a really good spot in Brooklyn Park for pho. And pho is something I tried, maybe about a year ago, just to try something new. I just moved to Brooklyn Park about 2 years ago. And so I was looking at different venues for food, and my friend recommended this place. So that's how I first got introduced to Kim Ann. And then my experience that I did for this class was looking into the restaurant a little bit more in depthly, and I got to interview the owner, and it was really, really cool. Kim Ann first opened back in August, and I think the date is kind of interesting and kind of significant. So it was August 8th, 2008, so 8808. And they were first actually right across the parking lot at a different location that's now known as Lemongrass in Brooklyn Park. But they moved to locations because they needed more room. Their business was booming, and so after about 3 years, they moved to this corner space here, where you can see in the picture, this is where they are at now. And this is a Vietnamese family-owned restaurant. And the reason they got started in this is their family actually had a background in business. So not necessarily cooking or culinary, but just doing business in general. The food is beyond good in my mind. I do find it very authentic. I find the ingredients to be delicious, not old, cooked to order. And I have to just share what I've gotten there literally every single time since I have gone to Kim Ann. I get the special beef pho. And what that consists of is a beef broth that is like any other. It's not overly oily. There's a lot of flavor. It's not bland. It's really, really good. So sorry about that small rant. But anyways, the pho is amazing. The Thai basil is so fresh and brings in so much flavor. There's onions and sprouts, and of course, the pho itself, pho meaning rice noodle, shaved beef, and a special meatball, which I don't know the exact ingredients of the meatball. But, that's kind of part of the fun and the mystery of the food, and eating from a different culture is just enjoying the ingredients for the flavor, not necessarily what they are. And jalapenos, which I love. And then, the seasonings in the broth, star anise, cinnamon cloves, and then you can garnish it too with a little bit of green onions and cilantro. So the reason that I chose to do Kim Ann, even though I've eaten their food before, but it has always been takeout. Never have I ever sat down in the restaurant, went in there, and had the experience. And to be completely honest with you, the reason that I haven't been in the restaurant is because in Brooklyn Park, you typically see individuals staying within their culture or community, within where they are comfortable. And so there's a couple places in Brooklyn Park that are heavy in Asian culture, and specifically places like Kim Ann or the Banh Mi Co. When you look at those establishments, you almost see all Koreans, or you see all Vietnamese people. You don't see a heavy diversity within the actual establishment. And when I went to Banh Mi, which is another place in Brooklyn Park, I actually had a really negative experience. So when I was introduced to Kim Ann, I just thought, I'll always get takeout because I know that there's a chance I'll like the food, but maybe I won't be welcomed inside. However, I'm really excited I did this because I did step out of my comfort zone, and I was able to, experience the diverse community of Brooklyn Park, and of course meeting new individuals, especially the restaurant owner. And this picture here, I love this picture. This is what I took. I wish it was more clear. It's a little blurry, but this is the meat that comes in pho. And if you've never had pho before, the beef actually comes served pretty much rare. It's shaved, it's put in on a plate, and then you put it in yourself in the broth when it's served to you. But I just think it's so beautiful sitting on that Thai basil leaf. Oh, just so delicious. Okay, so when I was in the actual restaurant, before the owner came over and sat down with me at the end of my meal, I just wanted to kind of take in the atmosphere and look at what was going on around the restaurant. And I was one of very few white people in the restaurant. And I was okay with that. I wasn't uncomfortable. I'm totally confident in who I am. That's fine. I actually really liked it because I was able to step out of my box and look at a perspective of somebody else. And the table that I was sat at, I told the hostess, there's only one. And so I was sat at this teeny tiny little table in a nook. And, it was very different than a lot of your typical American restaurants because usually it's very loud. You're thrown in a table amongst other 4 to 6 tops and it gets really busy. But there was a whole section of just kind of single table booths and it was awesome. I know some people might not appreciate it, but I thought it was really awesome because I wanted to be able to take in my surroundings and not have to focus on the loudness or elbow bumping or anything like that with somebody I didn't know next to me. So the service in itself was very non-intrusive. And what I mean by that is if you picture going to Applebee's or Perkins, typically your server will check in with you, probably every 7 to 8 minutes or so. Hey, do you need anything? Do you need water? This or that. When I was at Kim Ann, I was sat down, and then when I kind of made eye contact with the server, they came over, took my order, and then after my food was brought to me, I was not bothered at all. And I know that, again, some people might be bothered by this or say it's not good service. However, I was able to really sit down, enjoy my food, take in the ingredients and the flavors, and really focus on having a meal and not being distracted by external things like a server or loud music or things like that. I really just was able to kind of take a moment and reflect. It was really, really interesting. And I think because of the overall atmosphere and it being really quiet in there, it really helped me just kind of have a peace of mind. It was really nice. And I noticed that a lot of the individuals that were in there weren't on their phones. They were either sitting with family, but they were quietly sitting. They weren't being loud. They weren't being rude. Being very, very respectful. And again, just as I was, enjoying the food as it was. Looking around the establishment, it's very traditional. So you might think of some Asian restaurants that really assimilate to the American way of eating and dining, but here it's very traditional. Very little English is written around the building, basically only where it absolutely needs to be, such as the menu, and not great detail about ingredients, but just kind of telling you the baseline of what things are. But the colors and the decorations were all very traditional, and I really enjoyed it. So, talking with the owner at the end of the meal, I learned a lot about Kim Ann and where the inspirations come from. All of the recipes at Kim Ann actually originated from the owner's grandma, and it wasn't until the grandma passed that the granddaughter actually monopolized on the recipes and turned them into the success that Kim Ann is today. Typically, the recipes were used only for like special events and weddings up until grandma passed, and then she used it to branch into what is now known as Kim Ann. The owner is very dedicated to having healthy and fresh ingredients. The picture you see here is to-go boxes that they do, and they make something different every single day. So this was out by the register, and they were fresh wrapped, smaller portions, but very, very fresh. There was no expiration date, no eat by. It was you either eat it today or it's gone. So I really, really appreciate that about the restaurant. The owner, I asked her, what's the number one ingredient you should have when you're cooking Vietnamese style? And she said fish sauce. And for those of you that aren't aware what fish sauce is, the basic way that I like to explain it is fish sauce is kind of like the renderance of fish and kind of like the sweat that comes off the fish. And then that's kind of created with some oils. And that is what fish sauce is. And she says if you want to cook a good Vietnamese meal, you've got fish sauce involved. What the owner and I talked about is I kind of just wanted to know, what do you wish more people understood about your culture and about your food. And she said that she really wished people would just understand that it's more than just stuffing your face stuffing your face with food and being full. It's about enjoying the experience and appreciating where the food comes from. She told me that the food in the restaurant, it takes a long time to prepare, and there's a lot of love and care that goes into making the ingredients, and the owner actually is 100% involved in ordering the ingredients, and she orders from different vendors. She doesn't do it all in one bulk order from one place. She looks at what ingredients she needs and where they're going to be sourced from the best in order to create the best meal for her customers. And I was really, really astonished by how much she said that you really just need to have awareness when you're eating Vietnamese food, and just have awareness of the overall intent in which food is being served to you, because in Vietnamese culture, food is something that you bond over. Like she said, that food was her grandma's and it was only for wedding or special events, but you really want to take time to sit down and talk to whoever you're with when you sit down and have a meal. I asked her about, why she chose Brooklyn Park to be the host of a restaurant, and I absolutely loved her response. She told me that Brooklyn Park was a community of many Americans, and when she was looking for a place to settle her restaurant in, she noticed the diversity of Brooklyn Park. She noticed all the different cultures: African, Vietnamese, English, Chinese, Korean, Hmong, Lao. It was just a big conglomerate of all these different ethnicities and races and cultures, and she thought, what better place to bring in my own very authentic and real perspective on Vietnamese food and culture, none other than a place that is a community of many Americans. And it just made me really open up and make me realize how awesome a town Brooklyn Park is, despite some of the negative connotations it has. I've only lived here for 2 years, but I've been really trying to break out of my comfort zone and learn more about the town. And by visiting Kim Ann, I have definitely done that, and I've gained a much greater appreciation for the love, time, and culture that people put into food, and especially the Vietnamese culture.